Welcome back, everyone. Good afternoon to one and all present here. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our next guest for the day. Mr. Sanjay Mitra is the Human Resource Manager at ITC Limited. He's a distinguished leader with a comprehensive experience of 15 plus years in leading organizational change, talent management, employee relations, compliance, and related fields in HR. He has a diverse industry experience ranging from FMCG and pharmaceutical to consumer durables. Mr. Sanjay has been involved in projects across the value chain, R&D, manufacturing, operations, and service. He has immense experience in mergers, acquisitions, as well as startup phases of the organization lifecycle. He has been associated with organizations like BPL Limited, Mylan Laboratories Limited, Coffee Day Beverage, and ID Fresh Food. Today, he would be sharing his perspective on how business in the manufacturing industry can sustain during the times of turbulence. Mr. Sanjay did his PGDM from our very own institution. We are honored to have him with us today. On behalf of SJIM, I welcome you, sir. I request you to take the session forward.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's really a privilege and honor to be part of this elite panel and be sharing a few of my thoughts on managing business during turbulent times. And it's really a pleasure to be coming back to the alma mater and sharing always. So I would now want to present. I have a few slides to take you through this knowledge sharing session, and I will be presenting that. Are the slides visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we are talking about managing turbulent times, and to give you a perspective of manufacturing industry, I would take you through what we have gone through, in the last couple of years. So as you all know, I am part of ITC Limited. ITC is one of the largest conglomerates of India, and we are into multiple businesses. However, I am working for India Tobacco Division. So ITC is, as most of you would know, is a large group. The gross sales value of about 74,000 crores. We have a large number of manufacturing locations, more than 200. We have multiple businesses, and it's more than 100-year-old organization. We have almost 36,000 and more employees, and we are building a much larger organization, and we want to be known as an enterprise of tomorrow. However, I would be taking you through this presentation, mostly regarding how we have managed to go through a turbulent time, especially managing a large unit which is in Bangalore. It's a more than 110-year-old unit which is there in Bangalore, 1,500 employees, and spread across 116 acres. And most importantly, you would also have to know that this particular unit is one of the highest revenue generators for the country. In fact, it could be in top 10 in the country on a daily basis. So in Karnataka, it may be the outside IT information technology. This is the highest revenue generator. So why I'm telling you this is because it is also very important as far as the government is concerned. So, for example, if the unit stops for a day, even the government would be interested to know why there is no revenue getting generated from this unit. Okay, so to start with, why to start with, I would like to take you all also through. I am sure you all know what is turbulent times, but then I wanted to start off from scratch. So what is turbulent times? So turbulent time is a time, place, or relationship. It's a pure definition from a dictionary, which talks about a lot of change and confusion and disorder. So what best no other time than the COVID times that we have seen is something which can define a turbulent time. I will take you through the onset, the impact, the business continuity, the supply chain story also. So while I'm responsible for the manufacturing supply chain, I would also briefly take you through a few glimpses or photographs of how the marketing team also managed during this period. And finally, the learning. So to the onset, right? Most of us have seen how the onset was. December 31st, 2019 was the first case reported from China. And then in India, we had major milestones. I have listed on a few. So 27 Jan was the first case which got confirmed. Then we also had to get in a lot of people from outside India in through various, rescue missions. And then we had 100 cases on 15th March. So you can see how fast, as we had understood that there is something called COVID, how fast it approached us. So there was about 100 cases by 15th of March. We had a one-day curfew on 22nd March, and on 25th March, a nationwide lockdown was imposed. The famous announcement that our Honorable Prime Minister did about the nationwide lockdown at 8 in the night, it actually gave less than 4 hours for people to, to be prepared to face the challenges. So impact, there was immediate impact. People were, it was a socio-economic concern. There was a fear of uncertainty, fear of disease itself. People didn't know what the disease is. A lot of us didn't know what a COVID is. We were a lot of videos coming in, a lot of information flowing, a lot of social media hype happening, a lot of chaos and confusion on the ground. So these are the famous photos of how migrant labor after a few days started to move across the country. It was a major nightmare that the governments had to handle. And of course, it also impacted various organizations. So what happened to the economy? India's GDP shrank 7.25% in 2021. It was the worst performance since independence. According to some economic houses, the economic activity fell from 8.9 to 4.7 on index within a month. So unemployment rose from 6.7% to almost 26% within a month. However, it came back to pre-COVID levels around June. However, that was a sudden impact and sudden change and sudden movement that happened. During the lockdown, a lot of people lost their jobs, salaries were cut. Now, what happened to the manufacturing industry? So I come with the perspective of the manufacturing industry. Manufacturing industry contributes to almost 20% of the GDP. It employs almost 20% of the country's workforce. In one of the indexes, the Manufacturing Purchase Managers Index slipped to a 7-month low in February 2021. The supply chain disruptions happened. Capacity underutilization was there. There was labor shortage. People started moving across. People started going back to the native places. People were stranded on the roads, and there was huge demand fluctuation. It had a huge impact on people too. This is I've taken this from the World Economic Forum report. It spoke about a lot of impact that had on people. Employers were pushed to look at psychological effects that the impact that the pandemic had. Low morale, high stress, general fear of the unknown kind of a thing. It also showed that people went through a lot of psychological distress and had an adverse effect on the mental health too. So there is also impact on the careers of the people. So what was the calling? The calling for the businesses, for the people, for the professionals was to look at restarting the economic engine of the country, manage the social impact, reassure the people, manage engagement levels of the workforce. It was a new normal. So we had to look at it as a new normal. We had to cope with it and look at it as a new normal. And most of all, the most important thing is to ensure, how do we ensure the business continuity was a challenge. To look at business continuity, I have taken this from the ILO website. Broadly, these were the areas that everybody, all of us looked at. However, this gives a structure to it. Establish business continuity plan for the organization, evaluate potential impact of disruptions to the employees, to the organization. A list of actions. ILO talks about 4P model, which I'll just take you through, and maintain and review the business continuity plan. So what are the 4P models that ILO talks about? It talks about people, process, profits, and partnerships. So people, we already spoke, what was the impact it had? So how do we reduce the impact on people? How do we look at sanitization in a new way, ways of working? What is the social distancing? How does it impact? How do people understand it? And what would be the new shift arrangement? For example, the government said you should not have shifts on a continuous basis. For example, we run in 3 shifts. Our plant runs 24 hours. So there should be gap between shifts. So how do we, a factory which has run for 100 years, how do we change the people's orientation towards that? People were going through fear. People had moved out to their native places. There were no transport operators running. So how do we handle absenteeism? What are the new processes that you will want to put in? How do you look at revenue, for example? Do you renegotiate with people with whom you are working? Do you look at reducing costs? Reducing cost was not a given thing, because we had to spend more on sanitation. We had to spend more on the changed way of working. But then how do you look at the revenue? By renegotiating contracts, for example? How do you work with your partners and motivate them to reduce their margins? Was something just challenging. And also the partnerships. So there may be major stakeholders. There are huge stakeholders. For example, government itself is a stakeholder. How do you manage government authorities? How do you work closely with them? There are political setups around the operational sites. So, for example, when we started the plant, the local politicians came and said you should not run, because everybody was scared. They said people from Bangalore city will come, and we are in the outskirts. So people felt that people from Bangalore city will come and spread the pandemic. So how do you manage that political setup? The industrial associations, how do you use the industrial associations like a Bangalore Management Association, CII, FICCI, to represent to the government and say that we need to run the business? And how do you work with trade unions, for example? Trade unions are major bodies within the industrial setup, which actually have to be taken along, because they also decide how to run the plant. They also decide whether to start working or not start working. So based on all this, we work towards restart. And then just running you through certain milestones that we had to look at during restart. We had to look at the government norms. For example, the government order said that every organization which is outside municipal area can start in the month of April. We had a very unique problem. Our factory is outside the municipal area, but everybody lives in the municipal area. So how do we move people out? Does it apply to everybody working, or does it apply to people staying only outside the city limits? That was something which we had to look at. Government started defining containment zones. Can we get people from containment zones or not? Was a challenge. What is the communication that we'll do? So this letter that I show you is the letter sent by the operations head of the unit to all the employees. We used the social media, we used WhatsApp, we used messages, and we said that you are safe. Please come back. We'll have to restart this. So that was something which we had to look at. We had to look at new way of compliance, and also look at adjusted targets, adjusted volumes, because the market was closed, the demand fluctuation happening, and also the new infrastructure that we had to keep as per the government notes to help people feel safe. We had to look at transportation. For example, we run, just to give you the scale that we handle, today we run almost 12,000 kilometers per day. So we get people from across the city. We are in the northern part of the city, and we get people from the southernmost part of the city, from Kengeri, for example, if you want to understand. So that too with 50% occupancy. So it's a complete change in the way we used to work. So we set up the organizational, emergent COVID management organization, and we started. However, when we started, we went through various hiccups. Transportation, as I told you, was a huge nightmare. We had to move from 100% to 50% occupancy. We had to get people, we had to avoid containment zones. There's something called Arogya Setu that the government launched. Arogya Setu was something new for people. There are local people coming in and saying that why are you starting, you should not start and all that. So just to so this is we are in the northernmost part of Bangalore, almost outside Bangalore, and we get people from across. So this is a map that we had to work on. So these were some of the things that the government started doing. Government started releasing notifications every day. The COVID bulletin started coming out. It started saying where are the cases, where are higher number of cases. We have to look at this every day and then see how if people can come, not come, and all those things. So Arogya Setu was something which I was telling you. For example, Arogya Setu started, it was an AI interface that the government had launched. One fine day, it gave a message to everybody in the plant saying that one person is at risk within 500 meters. So everybody stopped working. They were panicked. They said there's somebody infected. So we had to handle those kinds of situations. We also had to move into new infrastructure, new protocols. Sanitization, for example, even the parcels or the courier that is to come, we had to sterilize using UV equipment. We went into AI to look at the temperature screening of employees, which was something which was not done. We had to stop attendance recording because it was biometric. People used to use fingerprints. So we had to stop that. How will people adapt to the new changes in the organization was a challenge. So we had something very new for everybody, where people's temperature, the equipment is to test on a real-time basis and allow them inside. So for people also it was new. They were going through a lot of changes happening in the unit. Then we had to put up things like sneeze barriers in sheets where people used to work, avoid people contact. We had to change the way canteen used to work. We had to put barriers in canteen. People were, earlier 6 people used to sit on a table. We had to make it 3. Some new interventions also happened. For example, the in-house we designed a touch-free tap. So people need not touch the tap. How will they drink water? Because normal water dispensers, somebody has to touch and then the water comes out and then the water is utilized. Now, somebody in-house developed a touch-free tap using sensors. How do you look at sanitization? How do you look at transport, for example? And how people will move? We had to look at one direction movements. People were constricted. Earlier, people used to move on both directions, but we said in a particular lane, they have to move only in one direction. Sanitization was the in thing. People were reassured because of this. Right? So how did we do all this? We looked at it as a 4-quadrant thing. We established and sustained protocols. For example, we had done more than 3,000 COVID tests for people to get tested and come back. We had to look at contact tracing of employees. We had looked at partnerships. I told you, we had to look at partnerships with various stakeholders. We had to increase the number of hospitals we work with. We had to build trust in the local leaders. We had to work with new government departments. For example, we used to never work closely with health department. During this period, we had to establish, connect with them, work with them, and look at how do we take them along with us as we restart the organization. We had to look at the health of the employees. More than 1,000 employees were hospitalized and their families. We had to help them with that. We had more than 350 positive cases in the unit. How do we manage the emotions of the people when there is an infection? In fact, when the first infection happened, the people stopped working. People are scared to come into the plant. We had to manage those emotions. And then we also had to work very closely with the unions, right? Because unions are the representatives of the workers. And then we had to work closely with them, work as a team and ensure motivation, right? This was what we did at the supply chain, at the unit. But what about the market? So market also responded equally fast, out of the box thinking. How do we reach to the market in a better way, in a new way? How do we look at getting new customers when there is no demand? How do we use new alternate ways of, you can see here, ITC launched something called ITCstore.in, which is an online thing, which we had done only during the COVID. And now it has become a business model, but that time it was a need. How do we look at new kinds of vendors? How do you use vegetable vendors to sell all the other products that we have? Right? Cigarettes is a product that we are market leaders. So cigarettes, we all know it's a strict business that we do in cigarettes. So it has to be touched. Can we look at vending machines for that? Something which we did. People moved fast. There was agility in the business. We worked with local authorities. We tied up with Swiggy Instamart. These were all something new that we had to do in the market. In fact, some sales people use their own vehicles to take the product out and start selling. So because unless we restart the business, unless we start moving towards normalcy, how do you come out of the fear? How does the business restart if you don't do all this? So all these were different things that happened during this turbulent time, right? So what was the learning? So learning is this, after all this. So be prepared for the unexpected. Resilience was the in thing. What is the commitment to resilience as an organization? How agile are you to adapt to the ever-changing change? How do you use new technology? Right? We used to travel a lot earlier. Now most of the times we use technology to connect. We use the Zooms, the Teams to meet with people. And overall, above all, what is the execution excellence? What is the excellence that you have in executing whatever you plan? These were the learnings that we had during this turbulent time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
So it would have been a great challenge for manufacturing industries to operate during the advent of pandemic. How was the ITC able to manage and strive forward?
So I just took you through. As I told you, if you look at the learning slide, it was the resilience which was the most important thing. Then it was about looking at newer way of doing things, adapting to change. It was about taking people along, building the trust and the confidence, not only among the people within, because there was fear all around, but also to influence the stakeholders. How do you work with the government authorities? How do you work with the representatives of the employees, like the trade unions? How do you bring them into confidence? Because it's about fear, it's about life, it's about health. It is about people back home. While people come to the factory to do the work, they go back home. So at home there are old parents, at home there are children. So there was a lot of fear around. So it was about, while I'm talking, even I, for example, was going through fear, because I had my mom at home who was old. I had my son who was very young. So it is about yourself being resilient and also influencing people around you to be resilient and to come up to the challenge.
There is another question, sir. What was the role that the labor had to play, and how has it evolved and changed during the pandemic?
Labor, is it? Talking about labor.
Yes, sir. The labor union. Yeah.
Yes, the labor union is elected representative of the workers in the unit, and just for your understanding, the union that we handle is one of the oldest unions in Bangalore. It is almost 60 or 70 years old union. The plant itself is 120 years old, but last 60-70 years we have a union. So it's a very evolved, very mature, and very strong union, and very, very also democratic. While there were a lot of things, because unions also, especially during this period, the unions, we work like a team. There are times when we don't work like a team. We are at the two different ends, right? Unions are coming with the demands, management comes with the constraints, and ultimately negotiated outcome is achieved. But during this period, union and the management was one team. It was for one cause. While they had concerns, how do we handle those concerns? How do you use them also as the communicators How do you convince them? Because unless we convince them, the employees don't get convinced. Even after you convince, the employees had issues. But then they worked as a team. It was one team that worked. We used to have a room like a war room, every day morning, sit there and see what are the developments, where are the cases come, because especially when it started, it was very new to all of us. But the union worked like a team. It was like one team working together.
One last question, sir. What were the various employee engagement initiatives ITC carried out during this time of adversity?
So you can look at it in two different phases. In fact, we started off with the lockdown. So almost about 40 days, people were at home. And after that, we started working. And we being manufacturing locations, all of us had to work. So there's no concept of work from home once the plant started. So during the lockdown, we had to keep them engaged. So during the lockdown, we ran a lot of initiatives like, online social events like singing competitions, drawing and painting competitions for the children. We had some cookery, cookery challenges that we had run. So people are kept engaged during the lockdown phase. But once when we started, we could not do the traditional way of doing things. We used to have something called drawing and painting competition for kids every year, which is everybody used to come to a place. The kids used to come, and it used to be like a mela. But then during this time, we said, you do the painting at home, you bring and give it to us, we will publish a book. So we published a book of all the paintings that the kids had done. So we had to look at it very differently. We could not do it the way we used to do earlier, because meeting each other, the social distancing norms, etc., were also something which we had to look at. But then we had to do, the engagement was mostly on health. We ran vaccination drives. We ran vaccination drives, because initially when vaccines were introduced, they were not available for everybody like it is available today. So we had to tie up with hospitals, run vaccination drives. We ran about 5 vaccination drives. So those were the engagements that we had during this period.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights. We're grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. Thank you again, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. It was a pleasure. All the best.
Yes.
All the best to you all.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to call upon Shambhavi to introduce the next speaker. Over to you, Shambhavi. Thank you, Navya. Good afternoon to all. I'm Shambhavi Trivedi, and today it provides me immense pleasure to look through the profile of Ms. Surekha Desai. Ms. Surekha Desai is a Senior Vice President, Customer Operations in Vodafone Intelligent Solutions. The company is currently managing markets in UK, Ireland, and New Zealand. Ms. Surekha has done her bachelor's in microbiology from Mumbai University and later connected with large entities such as SIFI as Head Western Region Customer Service, Tata Communications Limited as Head Global Contact Center and Service Excellence, Vodafone as Senior Vice President Customer Service, and currently she is appointed as Senior Vice President Customer Operations in Vodafone Intelligent Solutions. Ms. Surekha Desai has 20 plus years of experience of multiple domains in customer service with in-depth knowledge of telecom B2B. She specializes in setting up customer service for global and national greenfield ventures in B2B and B2C space. Thank you, ma'am, for being a part of our conference. Today, she will be addressing us on the topic, the pivotal role of customer experience in building and transforming businesses. I request you, ma'am, to take the session forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this very, very warm welcome. I'm hoping that you're able to hear me loud and clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's indeed a pleasure to come and join all of you today. Coming and joining you in this session of UTKARSH, your annual leadership conference, gives me great pleasure. And it's really, really nice to go ahead and look at all the work that this organization has done over the last several decades. On that note, thank you so much for the warm welcome one more time. The topic that I'm going to talk about today is going to be the pivotal role of customer experience in building and transforming businesses. All of us are familiar with customer service, and we believe that it's an integral part of what we as end users experience as service. So let me start by telling you a story. Can you just confirm if I need to do the slides, or if you're able to bring up the slides, please?
Ma'am, you can bring it up.
Okay, just give me a minute. I'll share my slides. Right. So I'm going to start by telling you a story, guys. I think you can see my slides on your screen. Can you confirm that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to start by telling you a story, guys. The story goes back to 2016. I was working for I was working for Vodafone at that point of time. Like all of you, I spent a lot of time going back and researching on how I could do things a lot better than what I do today, spending a lot of time reading through some white papers on the new trends that's there in the industry. How could I make myself a lot more sharper? I came across this article from Gartner in 2016, which said that by 2018, 50% of all the investment that an organization would make would get redirected into customer service. Now, at that point of time, traditionally, most investments were happening either into marketing or they were going into products. So this was a completely significant shift that was happening in the way organizations would do. The other thing which really caught my attention was organizations said that 83% of our customers were willing to pay a premium if you were to go ahead and offer them a high quality of service. Now, I was very excited on hearing this. I went back and spoke to my director at that point of time. I told him that, hey, listen, if your customers are ready to pay a premium for the great service that me and my team offer them, I definitely demand a pay rise. Now, my director listened to me very intentfully and told me to go back and continue to do a lot more to go ahead and improve the customer experience. And I'm still waiting for that pay rise. Now, as I was preparing for this session, I came across another article. And this was an article that I looked at from McKinsey. It said that 86% of the customers in 2022 are willing to pay as much as 25% more for a better customer experience. So it was 83% a few years back, and now it's 86%, and they are ready to pay 25% more for a customer experience. I am absolutely encouraged by this news piece of information. I do believe that it gives me a great opportunity to go back to my director and tell him that, hey, listen, you now definitely need to give me a pay rise. Now, what is the outcome of that, whether I get a pay rise or not, is a conversation that I'll keep you guys posted on. But I hope I'm able to impress upon all of you guys over the last 5 years, there is a very, very clear, distinct trend that's happening in the industries where customers are willing to pay a premium across industries. It's not only limited to telecom, across industries, if they're able to get a service which is absolutely right up there, right? So for all organizations, it is imperative for us to be able to go ahead and provide a service which not only gives us a sustained competitive advantage, but also gives us the kind of advertising that we don't get from the traditional channels, right? So having convinced all of you guys that this is the right place to stay invested in, I'm sure you're going to be a lot more intentfully listening to me over the next 15 minutes as I go through the rest of my presentation today. Yeah. So on that note, let me move on to the next slide that I wanted to talk about. This is a very, 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 very busy slide, and I'll navigate the slide a little more slowly. But let me tell you why I put all of those things together. So when I was talking to Professor Joy and Dr. Rajan, they said that, hey, listen, we've got the smartest minds who come in and work with us as a part of our management institute. And quite a few of them, and perhaps a lot of them, are our upcoming unicorn founders for India. And whatever that you provide them as inputs today are going to help them in their journey to go ahead and build the future of India. So I'm very excited to partner with all of you guys today as you go ahead and come forth and make a new nation for all of us. So I'm going to start by just talking to you a little bit about what do I see in the landscape of service over the last 12 months? What are the emerging trends? How are organizations coming up and going ahead and making sure that these trends, they're able to go ahead and leverage it and bring the best out for their industries and for their customers. I would like all of you to come and I'm going to start with at the left corner of my presentation. So the first thing that I see which is happening is proliferation of available digital service channels. Sometime back, perhaps a decade ago, most organizations would have had just 2 channels available for customers to come in and interact. So you would have a voice channel, you would call the customer care, or you would perhaps have a fax machine to send in a complaint, right? So that's really archaic. Gone are the days when there are limited channels and the customer struggles to go ahead and connect with the organization. Today, customers are spoiled for choice. There are so many channels that's available. And the choice of the channel is completely the prerogative of the customer. And it's not definitely the prerogative of an organization. Organizations genuinely need to provide the customers all channels. And depending on the customer's comfort, they would choose either chat, voice, email, or they would go ahead and download the organization's app and engage with the organization, right? Proliferation of channels are making it a lot more easier for customers to deal with companies today. And that's definitely working on the most important aspect, which is ease of doing business when you interact with an organization. So that's the first trend that's catching up for over the last few decades, as well as accelerating in the last few months. The second one is about what is the benchmark? There is no benchmark within an industry today, or there's no benchmark within a vertical today, right? Telecom is a vertical. Do we have a benchmark which is within verticals? That no longer exists. When you have the best in class in the industry, across industries, like for example, if I'm telecom and if I have somebody like an Amazon or a Flipkart who's done a fantastic job, they go ahead and set the new benchmark on how customers will experience service with us, right? They no longer expect the telecom industry to lag behind the best in class service industries in the world today. So the benchmark of what is expected by the customer is a sum of all the experiences that they have when they deal with the rest of the organizations in the landscape today, and definitely not limited to the telecom vertical. And that brings in a huge amount of pressure. It brings in a huge amount of pressure to reset, reorganize, and come forward as organizations. So that's the second trend that we have today. The third trend that we have today is the buyer, right? There is a huge shift in the person who's consuming the service. The person who's consuming the service is largely going to be the generation Z today. There's almost a 50 to 60% shift towards the generation Z today. Now, what that means for us is these are people like yourself or slightly more older than you, and these are people who are digital natives, and they definitely don't want to go ahead and consume or experience services in the old traditional way that the millennials would have experienced or the baby boomers would have experienced, right? That's definitely not going to work for them. And with that mindset, it's obvious that organizations will have to go ahead and create a digital first journey across the products that they create, across the services that they create. So that's the third trend that we have. The demographic shifting towards digital natives are definitely ensuring that organizations need to shift their mindsets as well. The last one that I have out there is there is a significant rise of channels available for customers to come in and solve their issues through third party, right? Knowledge is no longer the prerogative of only the organization. It's available through communities. It's available through multiple YouTubes. It's available through multiple sources. So from a customer's perspective, they are not bound to go ahead and get the solution only from, say, if I have an Apple phone, it's not necessary that I need to go to Apple to get it solved. I can go to the communities. I could go through many other channels to solve it. Now, that's going to be an opportunity for the organizations to constantly look at what are the options that the customer is using when they're evaluating third-party operators or third-party service options, and to continuously optimize search engines so that the customers can be channelized back into the right sources or the sources which the organizations would like them to go ahead and consider as the primary sources when they go ahead and search for this. So those are the four big trends that I can see over the last 12 months. Now, having said that, some of these trends are coming up, let me talk to you about what are organizations doing, right? So there are 4 pillars that organizations are working on, and I'm going to take you through these 4 pillars just to give you a sense of what are they trying to do. If you as founder, CEOs, if you have to build your organization, what would you want to think about as you build your customer journeys? So I'm going to start by the first one, which is about seamless service across the channels of choice. Like we said, right? It's no longer the prerogative of an organization on which channel would the customer choose. The customer is going to choose a channel as per their convenience. So if I would like to chat with you, I'd like you to make sure that my experience on chat is equally as good as my experience of talking to an advisor on the phone. Or if I'm going to use your app, you're going to make sure that I'm able to resolve the issue with the same level of intensity as what I would have if I have to talk to your advisor as a live person. So the omni-channel experience is one of the most critical aspects that the customers are going to go ahead and enjoy in an organization. As organizations super invest in digital assets, it is important that every channel has the same level of empowerment and the same level of customer journey maturity. Customers definitely would not like to go ahead and enjoy an experience which would mean that they are handed off from one channel to another channel just because another channel is not mature enough to go ahead and handle it. So for example, I want to go ahead and buy something, but a buy journey is not designed digitally. It's an assisted journey. So I'm going to push the customer to a human assisted journey. So those are the things which customers may not always enjoy unless and until it's a very complex product that the customer is buying. The second trend that is there here is when COVID happened in March of 2020, most organizations were, some of them were, of course, having their contact centers or their customer service management applications hosted on clouds like the AWS or any of the other cloud platforms. But quite a few organizations had on-premise setups. Now, with an on-premise setup and with the advent of COVID, there was no possibility for customers to get support. So customer service had the most impact over this period of time. There was significant deterioration of service. So one of the things which most industries have taken care of over the last several quarters is they have powered up their customer service teams by hosting all applications to support customers on cloud. What that means for us is we are available 24/7 and there is a high availability and we have high resilience on the level of service that the customer gets. So those are the trends that we have from a omni-channel as well as from a cloud experience point of view. The second one that I want to talk about in this framework is about the product life cycle. So sometime earlier, if you would look at our own experiences, you would notice that it's not necessary that all aspects of a product life cycle was completely covered through a channel, right? It could be fragmented. For example, I may buy, let's take a life insurance policy. I may buy the policy online, but all aspects of servicing the policy may have been non-assisted, or it could have been digital, depending upon the maturity of the product. Customers definitely don't enjoy that. So the second aspect that organizations are focusing on is to make sure that the product cycle is completely embedded across all channels with the same level of maturity. So whether it's the explore phase, where I'm just going ahead and looking at which product to buy, or whether it's the buy phase where I'm buying the product, or if it's the provisioning or the installation phase, and finally the in-life cycle of the customer, right? All aspects of that are periods of the customer's life cycle, which are embedded as a part of the customer journey and built by organizations in the channel. So if you have a digital channel, it cannot definitely limit itself to just a part of that cycle. It has to cover the full cycle, is one of the most important things that we have. And let me just give you an example just to bring it alive. I'm a customer, I'm enjoying your service. I want to upgrade the service. I want to buy, like you have a iPhone 12, I want to buy an iPhone 13. Now, if that upgrade is not going to be easy for me, I may not go ahead and complete the upgrade because the ease of doing business is going to be poor. And hence your ability to go ahead and make sure that the product life cycle, including the upgrades, are taken care of as a part of your design is going to be one of the most important aspects when you design your service across the customer service channels that you have. So that's the first vertical that we have. The second vertical that we have is all about digital first. And needless to say, most organizations want to make sure that the customer enjoys a service which is a lot more digital first, and only go to the human being if it's required and if it's a complex one, right? So Vodafone as an organization is also no different than this. Digital first is the way all journeys are designed in Vodafone. Let me give you an example. If you were to call up a contact center, or even if you call up some contact centers today, they perhaps will walk you through an IVR which has got 10 options. And by the time you reach the 10th option, you quite possibly don't remember what the first option was, right? So the IVRs of the past were typically very, very long driven trees, which would make you remember those options. And you would have to key in through DTMF some options to get routed to an agent. That's the old way of doing it. What is the new way of doing it? You would go ahead and have a voice bot, which is able to go ahead and convert what you have. So you are, as a customer, you'd be asked as to what is the support that you require. You would say, I have a problem with my bill. Now, depending upon the words that you have as a part of your conversation with the bot, so bill and problem, the bot understands that this is a customer who is complaining that I have a bill which is not right. So depending on these intents, the IVR will then route the customer to the right skill group with an advisor or through a channel to go ahead and assist the customer and get that resolved. So that is how both IVRs, the machine learning, which is constantly happening, as well as the algorithms that we are picking up from the customer journeys, are helping us further sharpen the way in which we will deal with the customer. And these intents, as they are called, the way the customer engages with us, are constantly going through changes so that we are able to go ahead and direct the customer to the right channel instead of transferring the customer from one vertical to another vertical just because we didn't understand what the customer meant. So that's the important aspect that we are working on as a part of improving the ease of dealing with specifically with the telecom industry. So that's the first thing that we have in the digital first. The second one that's happening is what we call as RPA bots. Now, what's an RPA bot? An RPA bot is a software technology. And as a part of the software technology, what it does is it prepares a software bot which goes ahead and emulates human action across the CRM, across a couple of functions that a human being will typically do while dealing with a particular request. So let me give you an example here. This is an example. I, as a customer, I come to the website of Vodafone. I want to buy an iPhone 13. I go ahead and give a request that I want to buy an iPhone 13 silver color with this particular specifications. This bot picks up that request, goes back to the warehouse, checks if this is available, and depending upon the availability of the mobile device, it goes back and confirms to the customer that the device is available and the color is available. If that's not the case, it would tell the customer that this is not available and these are the alternate colors that I have. And in case the customer still wants to go ahead and have a conversation, the bot would then go ahead and redirect the customer to an advisor. Right now, why do you think a bot is required? You would feel that, okay, it's okay. How does it make a difference? So imagine in November or in October of 2021, when Apple goes ahead and launches the new iPhone, the number of customers who want to go ahead and get that iPhone before Christmas or before before New Year, there will be so many customers who want to do it that the volumes that you would have would be much more than the average volumes that you would see perhaps in the first 6 months of the year. And as an organization, you don't want to over-invest for some seasonal elements that you have to take care of, right? And that's what a bot does for it. A bot is able to go ahead and take care of the incremental load. You could have a bot farm, and these bots can be taught to go ahead and do a piece of activity for you at an absolutely short notice and take care of your customers. That is a brilliant way for most organizations to go ahead and handle surges in customer demands, as well as be able to go ahead and take over mundane jobs that the customers do, I mean, as advisors do, and the complex jobs coming into customers. So that customer advisor. So that's the element that I have. The third one is about, the third vertical is about the expert advisor. So as a part of the expert advisor, what we are saying is anything which the digital channels or the bots could do, we would definitely like the bot to do. Anything which is not possible there, we would like to have an advisor take over and handle that. And which is where the advisor is now becoming the super specialist and the go-to person to make sure that you have an experience while dealing with this brand, right? So I'll give you one example. I was dealing with a bank, and in the bank, you have remote sites. It's very difficult for the bank manager to tell you why the site is down, right? It is impossible for a non-technical person to look at the LEDs and tell you what exactly has gone wrong. And that is where organizations like ours would use applications like either TechSee or LogMeIn, or use an AR device to go back and look at what exactly is the LED reading, what exactly is happening on the cables, and how do we fix the issue by resolving the issue a lot more sooner than what would traditionally happen by sending a field engineer to the customer's place and then resolving it. An expert advisor is becoming very, very critical, and empowering the advisor to make sure that we're able to resolve issues is key to an organization's success. Right. The second thing that's happening out there is it's not good enough just to be knowledgeable. That's genuinely not good enough. Organizations have to show the brand value. They have to show empathy. And COVID has taught us that. You would see many, many, many examples all across the internet where customers have experienced superlative services and they have become a lot more loyal than what they were in the past, just because an organization was sensitive to the situations that they went through because of COVID. So let me give you one example. We would have customers who would say, hey, I am not able to go ahead and pay your bill at this point of time. Now, as an organization, there are two ways to deal with this. Either I would say that, hey, listen, you need to pay. If you don't pay, I'm sorry, but I need to go ahead and maintain my cash flows. Or I would tell the customer that, okay, I understand the situation that both of us are in. Here's an opportunity that I would work out for you. And here is a win-win that I would do to go ahead and defer and create a slightly more deferred payment methodology for you. Creating a culture of excellence or creating an empathetic customer service journey is most critical from a customer's point of view. And I would say that if there's one thing that I would like to overemphasize, I think it's that element of being empathetic, because that brings in the core of what the brand is. The last vertical that I would like to talk about is going to be the elements on how are brands working to create a much more preemptive and proactive customer journey today. In the past, if I have had situations that create call flows into the contact center or in walk-ins into the stores, I would have typically dealt with it reactively, right? So let's take an example. I've got a problem on my bill. I've perhaps double billed the customers and a bunch of customers because of an incorrect billing algorithm. I would get the customers come in and then we would resolve it. That's a bad model to do it. Proactive resolution of issues is going to be the core of what we do as organizations today. So an example is Bank of America. The moment Bank of America realized that one of their repeat payment items that the customers would see a surge, the customer would get a proactive message from Bank of America nudging them to say that there is a surge because of this particular price increase in this repetitive item, and asking the customer to explore other options within the Bank of America chart or the gateway that they have, so that they're able to go ahead and get a very conscious and engaged customer. Now, instead of the customer getting a bill shock and feeling bad about the way Bank of America dealt with them, their ability to go ahead and handle them in this particular manner is going to be critical for them to have an engaged, proactive customer. Proactive customer definitely builds a lot more loyalty. It may still mean that you need to go ahead and invest and there is cost in handling a customer, but from a loyalty factor, the customer feels that there is a lot more that this organization is thinking through. And hence, most organizations are spending a lot of time relooking at customer journeys and figuring out how can we proactively engage with customers than to do it reactively. So that's the vertical on preemptive and proactive customer journeys. Last but not the least, please organizations do fix the issue before the customer knows that there is a problem. So don't we all want somebody to do that for us, right? So let me give you an example there. We know that we all of us go ahead and browse the internet. To browse the internet, our phones have something which is called an APN. It is highly possible that I may have picked up a wrong APN when I transitioned from one service provider to the other. If I, as a telecom service provider, I'm able to identify that, and through the over the air, I'm able to go ahead and send that message and correct that APN, that's the big one that we would have as a part of fixing the issue. So to be able to go ahead and preempt and fix the issue before the customer can see it is going to be the biggest driver that most organizations have. In telecom, there's a lot more examples there. For example, I would know that there is a poor network or an RF in a particular area. I could remotely go ahead and power up that RF, I could fix the antenna, I could do a lot of things remotely so that the customers don't have to complain for me to go ahead and get that sorted out. In a nutshell, I would like to say that there's lots happening on this space. Organizations do believe that price is no longer the premium, and it's not going to be the only driver. What you're able to go ahead and offer to customers as value adds is going to be one of the most important areas in which the customers will deal with us. Having said this and having shared this with you, I'm going to the next slide, and I'm going to go a little quicker because I know I'm running out of time. Now, you've done all of this. Your customers are constantly giving you this feedback. So the customer engages with you, you get a feedback, you follow up with your customer. All of that then goes back into what we call as the outer loop. You identify issues, you know these are the problems that you need to tackle as an organization. You constantly put in structural improvements, and on the back of that, you're communicating this back to your employees and to your customers. Remember, your customers are an integral part of your journey. They cannot be in isolation to your journey as an organization. So it is an engaged customer and an engaged employee who can make an organization thrive from a customer experience point of view. And finally, all of you will say, hey, listen, we always look at matrices, right? Without matrices, we don't know how well we are doing. I would encourage all of you to look at two metrics. One is the lead indicator. So the lead indicators are, okay, I went and visited, I went to the airport. How much time did it take for me to deplane? These are what we call as lead indicators. The lag indicators are how much more is the customer ready to pay because of the fact that the guy is getting, or the person is getting, a better customer experience, which is reflective in the lead indicator. So I would definitely encourage all you colleagues to go ahead and look at both lead as well as lag indicators. Lead indicators would typically be metrics when I'm dealing with the customer. Lag indicators are relationship, and of course, the financial metrics and the levers that we see. Finally, I'm going to sum up this session. I'm going to say, customer service is subjective, and every interaction needs to be personalized, and it needs to be evolved, and it is dynamic. It's not a case in point. It is dynamic. Second, we need to understand every journey across channels, and that's important for us to win a customer experience. Third, you definitely need to recognize that the customer has a direct impact on how much they're ready to spend with your organization. And this is a big opportunity that each one of us have when the customer engages with us. And last but not the least, all conversations when you're launching a new product or a new service or an existing product is getting revamped, having a collaborative conversation with the customer is going to be core to our success and core to be able to go ahead and drive the brand loyalty in the marketplace, right? So with these points, I'm going to sum up my session for today. I hope you're completely, absolutely as excited as I am as founder members of the new unicorns to go ahead and launch your new organizations with a very good understanding of how customer service can help you there. Thank you. That's all from me. I see there are two questions that's come in here. Okay, so Suman's question was, how can startups and SMEs integrate digital first customer experience in business? Suman, you'll be really surprised that SMEs and startups take on digital a lot more than traditional large enterprises. Typically in the industry, since SMEs would like to go ahead and adopt a SaaS-based model, they would like to go ahead and purchase SaaS-based customer-facing solutions so that they're able to go ahead, not only make sure that their cash flows are a lot more stronger, but they're also able to go ahead and give in the best experience to customers by creating a digital-first product when they build. So three things that SMEs and startups do. One, they leverage the SaaS platforms that are existing in the industry today to give the customer that experience. Second, their product design starts with the customer in the core, with digital in the core. That's the second one. And the third one, because of the nature of their business, they're able to evolve a lot more faster by integrating other applications and players in the marketplace to go ahead and make sure that they constantly evolve the experience that the customer has. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Thank you, ma'am, for an insightful deliverance. We have one more question. So how do you envision Metaverse, the next gen digital world, helping telecom companies in customer obsession and loyalty?
I think that's a beautiful question. While Metaverse is definitely a topic of conversation across many industries and we are no different. With 5G and metaverse coming together, I see great opportunities for us to be able to go ahead and do a lot more with our customers. Today, an opportunity that I have when I deal with my large enterprise customers is I need to go ahead and visit a customer to go ahead and have a conversation. Possibilities that I have through metaverse and through 5G to be able to go ahead and do virtual conversations, which are a lot more real time. When I go ahead and get my customer to experience a service today, that experience is not something which I'm able to bring alive. But with metaverse, I'm going to be able to go ahead and do that a lot different than what I'm able to do today from a touch and a feel perspective. The third thing in my view is customers will be able to go ahead and do a lot more stronger explore journeys than they have today before they go ahead and buy services from any service provider. Now, and this is just honestly, just my personal views on a very, very strongly evolving theme that's there. And I can't confess to be an expert here, but just my views on how I think things will evolve in the telecom world.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experience with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Wishing you the very best.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to call upon Shravya to introduce the next speaker. Over to you, Shravya.
Thank you, Shambhavi. Good afternoon to one and all. I am Shravya. It is my privilege to introduce one of the guests of today's conference, Mr. Ramananda SG. He obtained a degree of Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, Botany, and Zoology from MES College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Bangalore. He has a postgraduate degree in Marketing, Finance, and Human Resource. A professional with over 26 years of working experience across office automation, telecom, and education industry segments. He has set up managed operations as well as strategic business units. Mr. Ramananda has worked with various organizations. To start with, he worked with Pearson India as a Vice President of Sales and Marketing for over 7 years. He also managed the K-12 business for Pearson India and also headed the sales and marketing team of Bharti Airtel Limited, and also was the key account business manager for the Xerox. Mr. Ramananda also worked for BPL Limited as a senior sales officer. He has been awarded with Project Champion Award issued by Bharti Telenet Limited, and he was a national champion key account manager category issued by Xerox Modico or Limited. Without further ado, I, on behalf of St. Joseph Institute of Management, welcome you, sir. Today, he will be addressing us on the topic of evolution of the teaching learning environment lesson from the pandemic. I request you now to take the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And let me just quickly share my screen. And let me know in case you can see the screen clearly. Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is. You may proceed.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and thanks for the intro. And this is a real privilege and an honor for me to be part of the SJIM Leadership Conference 2022. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas and Rajan, for having me a part of this event. And I understand this is the 4th of the series of the leadership conferences. And specifically, the subject here is focused on sustainable business models during the turbulent time. So I'm picking on a related topic here, especially which is closer to heart and coming from the education industry. How is that we are looking at the evolution of the teaching and learning environment? What are the lessons for us from the pandemic? And what do we have in terms of few observations from a Pearson standpoint in terms of how things are likely to proceed? And let me share the insight that I'm not an industry insider, and as I have been introduced, so I have been across various industries within the education industry, been here for about 7 years. But more importantly, the last 2 years have been fantastic learning and unlearning of sorts. So I wanted to start with a few observations. Disruption is a reality, and no better than the pandemic and the turbulence it has caused because of how it has sort of changed the world order. And technically, you can't resist the change, but what you can do within your control is how is that you create your response mechanisms, how is that you can deliver consistency of your approach, and what is the outcomes we desire out of the change. So few quick thoughts. Let us start with some of the factors which are driving change. Here, I just want to sort of capture the continuum of the past, present, and the future. If you look at the past, the recent past, not so long ago, I think one of the elements which the pandemic has disrupted in the way the entire process of teaching learning happens is the fact that technology has forced us to innovate, learn, and unlearn, right? And this is equally applicable to both ends of the continuum, be it the learners or the teachers equally. And some of the changes are indeed irreversible. Now, cut to the present. If you see how life is changing for all of us, I think the usage of digital assets has accelerated per force, right? And our ecosystem was forced to find answers, quick answers to mitigate some of these changes, etc. So as a consequence, if you see, blended and hybrid learning has come, and this is here to stay. However, what's more critical is how is that we continue to make this ease of use and how is that it is consistent in its delivery, right? Now, cut to the future. If you look at what's in store for us, and this is not too far ahead in future, but if you look at one of the asks, and there are many students on this call, but I think one of the key expectations is how is that we move into anytime, anywhere learning of sorts, so that you're not constrained in a typical campus learning environment. And more importantly, how does content become relevant, appropriate, and how does content and technology combine together to make that difference? Quickly moving on, there are stakeholder concerns which had to be addressed. So what you see is a very simple chart here, which has all the stakeholders we believe listed. Let me start with the learners. The learners are keen in terms of how this entire process of knowledge acquisition would happen. And more importantly, how does the student become industry ready and focus on being employable in the real world. The teachers are looking at situations where the use of digital assets and digital tools, how do they become more equipped? How do they use the technology to their advantage to be able to deliver outcomes? Institutions, how do they invest on the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure? How do they create platforms? How do they ensure that the learning process is sharpened as we go along? One can't leave parents out of the scheme of things. Parents are interested as stakeholders to understand how this progress is happening for their children. Policymakers, I think the NEP 2020 lays its emphasis on some of these policies, which could be short-term, mid-term, and long-term. How do we preempt some of these changes as we go along? And lastly, for education companies like ours or edtech players, the key concern is how is that we can deliver scale, consistency, make commercially viable models as we go along. So if you summarize all the stakeholder concerns, how do we move from here? And what are the lessons for us? I think the biggest lesson for us, courtesy the pandemic, is how do we preempt similar disruptions, may not be necessarily the pandemic waves, but how do we preempt similar situations and proactively work on creating models which are appropriate. We speak so much about hybrid and blended learning models, but how can we make them sustainable and ensure that the consistency of these models in order to drive learner outcomes for both teachers as well as educators. From the institution standpoint, I mentioned it a little while ago in terms of how do we develop the digital infrastructure, where do we invest, and what sort of technologies do we need to be able to sort of look at what's the future set. From a content and platform, I think it has to be learner-centric. Whatever we are doing at Pearson is a great example of how we are strongly learner-focused so that all our products and solutions meet the changing requirements of learners. Last but not the least, if you pick up from the earlier chart, how is that we can use the collaborative working between all the stakeholders and create something which is sustainable in the long run, right? And having said that, what's happening within our ecosystem, right? I just want to share a few insights of the Pearson Global Learner Survey. This was a very exhaustive learner survey conducted by Pearson globally, meeting students, meeting parents, meeting educators, teachers, and policymakers, and bringing a complete stakeholder perspective. So I just want to highlight on a few points. If you look at one of the key insights which are coming up is 90% of the people worldwide are now beginning to recognize that internet access is a basic human right. So what does it do? It actually increases the dependence on technology to be able to deliver outcomes, right? If you look at the device ecosystem, if smart devices, be it tabs or phones, etc., virtual learning modes are becoming the new normal, right? And more importantly, as students would resonate with, if I say this, students need to be in control of what their learning is, and they would look for constantly innovative modes which can actually give them an anywhere access, right? If you look at equity issues, I think a big chunk of people are today worried that the division between haves and have-nots, the gap is widening. Access to technology, access to digital tools, and thereby a big percentage of people are worried that they would be sort of losing that edge, right? If you look at the skills part, I think there is a education to employability continuum, and I think the pandemic has actually allowed people to reflect on how they want to build their careers. And I'm sure the young friends on this call are increasingly clear about how they want to take their careers ahead. And added to that, I think a huge percentage, almost 90% of the students are now looking at career-oriented skills which can actually help them progress in their lives, be it simple elements like teamwork, communication, or could be skills which actually prepare them for the 21st century workplace we keep speaking about. So these are the key insights of the Pearson Global Learner Survey. I can have the link mailed to Dr. Rajan for those of you who take deeper insight in terms of how this entire global survey has panned out, and it would definitely make for interesting reading. If you look at the higher ed landscape in India, specifically because of what we are discussing today, I think the landscape has altered. It is not that the higher education landscape did not have digital tools in the past. However, the pace has accelerated, and we see that change not just in India, but coming up globally. And we keep talking about the various models. I think all the three models, online, face-to-face, and hybrid, would coexist in some way or the other. And depending upon how the situation is in a certain geography, these three would coexist and blend together to be able to deliver what both educators and students require, right? And increasingly, the new age learner, or we keep calling referring them to as Gen X and Gen Z, etc. But these learners are more open to the digital stimulus, if you like to call it. So whatever are those models which deliver digital information and knowledge would find greater favor amongst the young learners. Moving on, and I spoke about the content part earlier. This is one of the key elements which many education companies globally are focusing and will continue to focus as we go along. And some of the aspects of the Global Learner Survey highlights this specific element, and not just quality, but also appropriateness of the content. How is it easy to use? And how do you measure the utility and effectiveness of the content offered to students to progress in the learning journey, right? How is that there is greater rigor on academics, curriculum design? How is that we are able to create these social learning facilities wherein it is a comprehensive approach rather than just looking at content for the sake of it? And many suggestions which have come from faculty across the globe, the ask is very simple. How is that we are able to sort of customize or package all this content which is available in a wide variety? How is that it becomes more relevant to what we want our students to understand, and how does the customization help both the teachers and the learners to carry on the path of learning? Now, if you look at how Pearson's view is changing and what's changing within Pearson, I think first and foremost, Pearson very clearly understood the impending changes, and a lot of work happened within Pearson as soon as the pandemic broke out. And we, from a traditional publishing mindset, we are now transforming ourselves into a global leader of learning. And the entire acceleration is happening through the digital mode, right? One of the great examples of how Pearson is able to think ahead of the curve is the Pearson Test of English, which in the simple terms, it is referred to as PTE Academic, which is a 100% digital test with artificial intelligence enabled scoring, which is fast, secure, and obviously unbiased. Now, this actually happens at PTE designated centers where students come in and take these tests. But we have been able to now start looking at the next level. How is that we can make this available to candidates at home? Of course, it is going to be proctored, but how is that it can enable any aspirant, be it for higher education abroad or even for migration to other countries for employability, how is that the PT academic can become more customer centric? So this is one example, and a lot of work has happened, and we are constantly improving the user experience here. The second example is in the higher ed space, and this is where it might be relevant to many of you in terms of how this entire immersive content is now available virtually as an anytime, anywhere access kind of approach. And one great example is the e-library 2.0, and which is a complete digital learning platform, 4,000 plus titles, but more importantly, has its own LMS capability, ease of use, navigation experience, and it's a very simple subscription model for institutions. And so this is now delivered both as a B2B or as a B2C. And in the days to come, you will hear some exciting news on how Pearson is wanting to offer subscription-based and usage-appropriate digital capability content to customers across the world. And some of the institutions which have actually seen the benefit closer home, MS Ramaiah University, be it VIT, IIT Madras, to name a few. So this is something which Pearson has been able to think ahead of the curve, make it relevant to the needs of today, and remove the limitation of the element of whether we can access it within the campus. So this is, as I said earlier, anytime, anywhere kind of an access. The other element would be obviously on assessment and qualifications. And this is going to be a key ask as we go along. Today, it is very highly regulated in our country, but I think we are partnering very closely with the National Testing Agency, and through our division Pearson View, we are in the process of creating those qualification and assessment routes wherein the criteria for selection can be, there is a stamp of authority wherein people can use this assessment for gaining entrance into competitive courses and professional courses, etc. So these are some of the examples. Pearson has been able to sort of use the disruption in the positive sense, because if we don't innovate, we decay. And that is one of the reasons why it allowed Pearson to start looking at these opportunities, work closely with customers and stakeholders globally to create world-class solutions and products. So with this, I close my thoughts and open for questions or any suggestions you may have.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights. And we are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. And we have received a couple of questions from the audience.
Yes.
The question is, the edtech industry of today is highly competitive. How challenging is it to sell the edtech products, and your tips for future salespeople?
Oh, tips, that would be a little difficult. But let me share a few observations of how the entire edtech industry is evolving. Now, this is the best place to be, or the best time to be in the education business in India. No better times than this. And that is one of the reasons you see many unicorns and many edtech players fiercely competing with each other in the market. And true to their business model, each one of them is focusing on a core area, be it home-based tuition, be it K-12, be it higher ed. So there are various segments and sub-segments they play into. There is fierce competition. There is a whole lot of investment happening in this domain. But I guess the key is whether the players are able to get paid subscriptions and create sustainable commercial models out of that. And there are some very successful companies, and you keep seeing players like Baiju, which have scaled up admirably, and they have been able to use this pandemic to their advantage to be able to sort of drive some of these initiatives. So tips for salespeople: you need to understand the core delivery, the unique selling proposition of your organization, and while you're competing in the market, be it a sales or marketing effort, you need to be able to understand and deliver what is the customer requirement. Be very, very, very focused there. I hope that helps.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call upon Shreya to introduce our next speaker. Over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shravya. Adam Grant once said, resilience isn't about immunity to pain. It's about finding the strength to withstand strain. Good afternoon, one and all present here. This is Shreya J. We are waiting for Mr. Vaitheeswaran K to join the meeting. We appreciate your patience here. Good afternoon to one and all present here. This is Shreya J. Adam Grant once quoted, resilience isn't about immunity to pain. It's about finding the strength to withstand strain. Today, we are honored to have Mr. Vaitheeswaran K amongst us. Mr. Vaitheeswaran is the co-founder and CEO of Again Drinks, and he has also co-founded India's first e-commerce company, fabmart.com. He helps building brands, scale companies, and raising investments. He also co-founded India's first integrated retail company, Fab Mall, which was later acquired by Aditya Birla Group in 2006 and rebranded as More Chain of Stores. Mr. Vaitheeswaran is also the author of best-selling book, Failing to Succeed, the story of India's first e-commerce company. He has expertise on e-commerce, startups, entrepreneurship, leadership, deal making, general management, and data analytics. On behalf of SJIM, I warmly welcome you, sir. May I now request you to address the gathering?
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, it's a great pleasure to be here, and Thanks to Dr. Thomason for inviting me and for all of you to have me amongst your midst. It's a pleasure to deliver the keynote address and to all the students of St. Joseph's Institute of Management. Since the topic is about resilience, I'm going to speak on a few specific things that I've learned, primarily as part of my experiences of being an entrepreneur. Let me take 2 minutes and tell you what we did. In 1999, we co-founded India's first e-commerce company. At that time, the word e-commerce itself was not known and nobody even understood what e-commerce meant. So we set up the whole system, the ecosystem for e-commerce. We created this company called FabMart, which grew significantly and became India Plaza about 2013. And just when e-commerce was growing in the country, for various reasons, we could not continue, including some challenges internally. We were not able to secure the right funding and we were not able to go forward. All that can happen in business and startups, there's no issue. The challenge is that when we had to shut down the company at that time, the startup had several crores of rupees of debts to be owed to creditors in the market. Remember, these debts were acquired by the company and not by an individual. Now, one of the challenges in India is that we very closely attach the founder with the company. So if a startup is doing well, all the credit is given to the founder, and if a startup is not doing well, all the blame is also given to the founder. Both are not correct, because a founder and an entrepreneur's primary contribution is to think and start a company, but the success and failure really depends on multiple people over the years. But in India, we treat it very differently. So when this company failed, I was chased by a whole lot of creditors trying to recover the debts that the company owed them. And any explanation that, look, it is the company's responsibility, not as the individual's responsibility, did not work. Over a most harrowing period of about 12 to 18 months, I suffered a lot. My dignity was stripped. I was hounded by creditors in the market. I used to get phone calls from people, not just through the day, but through the night. Most of the calls will come after midnight until 4 a.m. People calling in the middle of the night and saying, you owe us money. I had a creditor who came from Delhi and met me in the office. Normally, when you go meet somebody, whenever you go meet somebody these days, I'm sure you carry your phone and you put it in the table. This person came from Delhi. Instead of a cell phone, he put out a knife and a dagger, a very sharp dagger. He put it on the table instead of the mobile phone, and politely told me that if I don't pay him what the company owed, then he would be forced to use all these weapons on me. Another vendor from Mumbai filed several cases against me in a Bombay police station. In India, the legal and the justice system is so full of holes and weakness that all it requires is, if you know somebody in the system, you can actually file a case against anybody you want. What happens to the case in court will be known only many, many, many years later, but you can harass anybody by filing cases. So a case was filed against me through some friendly people in Bombay. That case got transferred to the Alsur police station. Alsur is the area where I live in Bangalore. And I had to go and continuously for 3 nights in the police station trying to explain that, look, I have nothing to do with this. But it is not easy to explain to police constables and police officers and inspectors who are all part of this system. I met another vendor who came and told me that next time I drive my car outside, he will throw a baby in front of the car. Now, the first question that struck me is, whose baby was it? So I asked him, whose baby? He said, it doesn't matter. If you take your car, we'll throw a baby in front of the car. If you stop, you are able to stop without hitting the baby, anyway the crowd will lynch you. If you hit the baby, anyway you'll get caught and you'll get lynched. I know it sounds very hilarious, but if somebody tells you this, I took the safe way out and stopped driving my car. I stopped driving my car for some time. A whole bunch of employees, ex-employees who had left, some of them were owed salaries, gang together and post extremely distressing, sexually abusive comments about my wife on social media. The worst thing that happened was on December 31st, 2012. It was midnight and the city was, obviously the country and the world was celebrating Happy New Year Eve. But we were going through very difficult times because of all this. Around 12:30, there was a massive banging on our door. And when we were wondering who's coming to our house at this late, when we opened, we saw a bunch of people who were drunk, carrying knives. And when we opened, they started screaming loudly, saying, you owe us money. And my wife and son were there, all frightened. And they threatened them, saying that, tell your husband, your father to pay the money. They all had knives and weapons in their hands. So ask him to pay the money that he owes, otherwise it will not be a very happy new year for you. The reason I'm saying this, and I'm just giving you some examples of what happened. The entire experience is very distressing. Any business that you go through in terms of resilience, this is the worst thing that can happen. After that, I stopped going out anywhere. For a long time, I stayed at home. I even had very long negative thoughts cross my mind saying, why am I around? Why am I living? Why should I make my wife and son suffer like this? What is my crime? My crime was to try and become an entrepreneur, start up a business, and the business failed, right? It's not that I stole money from anybody. Businesses collapse. And when that happened, money goes down and vendors and suppliers obviously lose money. There's no question that there is a loss, but that's part of doing business. You can't hold individuals responsible for that and threaten with life and all that. But that is a situation I found myself in. And I didn't want to continue the agony for my wife and son. So all sorts of negative thoughts crossed my mind. All of that changed one day till July 2015. And this happened in 2013. But I just couldn't bring myself to go out, meet people, do anything. In between, I did some consultancy, some projects, but essentially I was just scared. I had lost all confidence in myself. And essentially, in a sense, I was hiding at home. I've captured all of this distressing, difficult experiences in my book called Failing to Succeed. And you should read the book, and I think you'll learn a lot about how Businesses India is done. In 2015, July, the Mint newspaper was chronicling 20 years of the internet in India. The internet first came to India in 1995. And in 2015, they said, we'll chronicle 20 different people, institutions, events for 20 years of the internet in India. And they picked me as one of the people. I wasn't sure why I was picked, but they insisted that they will. And then they wrote an article about me about my experience and how I had failed. And that article was one of the most well-read, commented articles for Mint. And it slowly opened my eyes, and I realized there's a whole lot of people who are interested in listening to such stories. So the next thing that happened is I got a call from another professor called Professor Jose from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. And he teaches a course on corporate failures. And he called me and said, look, all my course material is on corporate failures, but all my course material is an American case studies, because in India, everybody believes they're a very successful person and nobody wants to talk about failures. You're the first person who's done this, so I'd like you to come and address my class. I still wasn't confident of it going out, but my wife and son pushed me, saying, enough is enough. You can't just keep hiding yourself. It's okay, you should go. And so they forced me to go and take the session with the students, similar to what I'm doing here today. That session was an eye-opener, because at the end of the session, I was totally convinced that people were genuinely interested in listening to stories about failure and not purely about success. And that led me to chronicle my entire experiences of failing and succeeding and failure and success. And that's the book, Failing to Succeed. That book also gave me the confidence. It allowed me to put the past behind me and change my life from going through a very distressing situation, losing all sense of right, wrong, losing all sense of dignity, forced into a situation where I'm not talking to anybody. I suddenly became an author. And the book, if you read, and I urge you to read the book, for those who have read, you will realize it's a book that starts about successes of an entrepreneur, all the highs, the excitement, then the difficulties of entrepreneurship, then losing sense of balance, which is what I went through in the difficult situation. But the book ends on a very positive note. It ends on a very positive note because it says that, and I had used the time from July 2013 to 2015, doing a lot of research on failure and success. A lot of people had spoken about failing and succeeding, and gone deep into it, developed my own thesis and theories, and several things stood out. So one is this, and I've used many of those quotes in my book. So for example, Thomas Alva Edison, a very famous inventor, all of you have heard of it. He made this very powerful quote, which is in the first page of my book. It says, I have not failed. I've only found 10,000 things that don't work. Bill Gates said very nicely, saying that failure teaches very smart person that they're not always going to succeed. And the lack of failure essentially creates a myth around people that they're always good, they will always succeed. But nobody succeeds always in life. One of the most powerful things that happened is J.K. Rowling, and I'm sure you've heard of her. She's the famous author of Harry Potter. When she wrote the book, she was She was not married, but she had a daughter. She was living on government dole. She used to sleep on park benches. And when she was sleeping there, because she wanted to keep her daughter occupied, she came up with this crazy story about this guy who gets into magic and all, which essentially she then wrote down as Harry Potter. And then she went to multiple people who rejected that, saying it's not an interesting thing, till Bloomsbury published it. Many years later, she was invited to the Harvard Business School to speak about success and failure. And she started the whole thing by saying it is ironical that at a place like the Harvard Business School, which is at the pinnacle and the acme of business studies in the world, and brings out a whole bunch of students who go on to build successful careers. And you're inviting me to speak about success when I'm actually the biggest failure. And then she described her life on how she wrote. And she said this very powerful thing where she said essentially that all of us will fail at something in life. And the only way that we will not fail at anything is by not doing anything at all. And if you don't do anything at all, then you anyway fail by default. Which essentially means that the only way to avoid failure is to not do anything. But if you go and do anything, the chances are you will fail, because everybody can't succeed. And it's only when you fail, then you go on to succeed. But the most powerful quote, which always stays with me and continues to be an inspiration, is this person called J.M. Barrie. J.M. Barrie is a very world famous author of this book called Peter Pan. If you've read it, you will know about Neverland. And he said this very nice small line. He said, all of us are failures. At least the best of us are. And those inspirational things actually help me share my experiences in the book, put together the book, which subsequently is now a very popular book. It's a bestseller on Amazon. A lot of people read it, especially in the startup ecosystem. But the book turned out to be the biggest inspiration for me, because I realized that, hey, what happened? Nothing happened, right? I just started a business. The business failed. It's not that I failed. And instead of hiding, why am I hiding? I should wear it with pride. And that turned my life around. And since then, I'm very clear that wherever I go, I stand up and speak with pride, saying I have failed, because I know that only when I'm able to accept with pride that I have failed, I can take the next step to success. And this is the lesson that I wanted to share with all of you today. All of you doing your MBA, your business studies, will go out and build very successful careers. And remember this, typically on an occasion like this, you get people to deliver a keynote address, inspiring people to go and succeed. And that's exactly what I'm doing, but I'm doing it very differently. I'm not going to wish you great success in everything you touch, because it is not going to happen. It is not going to happen because nobody in the world ever has succeeded in everything that they try. Mostly they will fail at many things before they figure out a few things at which they succeed. And therefore, when you go out on your career, remember that you will fail, failure and success. It's quite likely that you'll fail more failure than success. But those failures are the stepping stone of success, and you must learn for them. The biggest lesson that failure has taught me is that, and a good friend told me this, so I'm repeating his quote. And since all of you are in college, you will understand what I'm saying. Success is like a subject. Failure is the entire course curriculum. Now, if you're doing your MBA, you will learn a few subjects, but the course curriculum is what you need to complete to become a business student. Failure is that curriculum. Success is just one subject. So remember, you're not learning subjects. You must focus on the curriculum. Every time you fail at something, use it as a great experience and an opportunity to learn. Write down the lessons. I failed because of this, but these are the things that I will learn, and imbibe those lessons. And that will help you in whatever you do next. And the more you fail, the more you learn. And very quickly after some time, you learn enough lessons, convert those experiences into doing the right things. And then the formula for success will start coming together. So don't let a failure put you behind. Be happy that you failed, because if you don't fail early enough, you should be very careful, because you're likely to fail. And the later you fail, the bigger you will fail. It's better that you fail earlier so that you can learn from it and go on to become success. That's essentially the lesson I wanted to share with you today. That failures are important. Failures are a great teacher. You learn from failure. It helps you to succeed. Now, I just want to leave behind a few thoughts, since all of you are business students going out, will have glitteringly successful careers. A few things that you must keep in mind before I close my keynote address today. One is India is changing. When we graduated as students, very different India. I finished my engineering in the mid-80s. Getting a job itself was very difficult. And we always looked upon the government to give us jobs. I think you are a very lucky generation. You should not be looking for the government to give you jobs or create jobs. It is not the government's job to give you a job. You should go and create jobs. Each of you must go work wherever you want, but promise yourself that you'll, at some stage in your life, in your career, you'll try and become an entrepreneur. If each of you go and create 100 jobs, don't have to create million jobs, just 100 jobs. But if every single person in India passing out of colleges go and do that, India will be a very different country. You are a very blessed generation that you are in India that is successful, strong, growing economically, powerfully. You should go and create jobs. That's one thing. The second thing that I wanted to share with you today is whatever you do in your career, learn from it. The first 10 years of your career, I say you learn. The next 20 years, you earn. The balance you give back to society. But the learning is very critical, because only if you learn, you'll be able to earn successfully. Now, on this learning, there's a lot of talk about domain expertise. So people say, if I'm in a financial services, I can talk about financial things. If I'm in IT services, I will do a startup in IT services. The point I'm wanting to make is, the key thing you must learn is the ability of critical thinking, the ability to think, ask yourself questions, and keep asking questions till you reach a practical, sensible answer. And if you do that, you will be able to do anything. The reason I'm saying is, don't go too much into domain expertise. I'll give you my example. In 99, I started an e-commerce company. Nobody in India know what is the meaning of e-commerce. So obviously neither did I, but we went and did it, because the only thing you do is to doing, failing, learning. Today, after so many years, after writing the book, during my India Plaza days, after the distressing experience, I said, I don't want to do a startup again, but my book inspired me. And I said, why should I give up? I can't be a failure. Let me go do another startup. And this time I did a startup in the area of FMCG, food and beverages. The brand is called Again Drinks. It is the only patented drink in India. No other beverage that you find in the market is patented. We broke through with an innovative development. We applied for a patent, and in 3 years, we got the patent. Typically, any beverage that you find in the market has sugar and preservatives, or it needs to be kept in a refrigerated cold chain and has very limited shelf life. But you find nothing that has all of this. We invented this drink called Again Drinks, which is the only beverage which has no sugar, no preservative, no color, no flavor, still does not require refrigeration and it has 90 days shelf life. It is a breakthrough. We applied for a patent. We've got it for 20 years. Now we're going to do some, hopefully, touch wood, some exports also. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because if you look at my background, my total experience in FMCG and food and beverages is zero. I have no idea. I've never done this before. Now, it would have been very easy for me to say, okay, my last startup was in e-commerce. Let me stay and do in e-commerce. Why should I get out of it? I'll be safe there. But as an entrepreneur, I said, no, I will not be safe. I want to do a startup in an area that I have no idea about. And that is my second lesson to you. Don't worry about domain expertise. If you have the ability to think critically and ask the right questions, you can do anything. In English, there is this common phrase that everybody says that it is not rocket science. To say that it is very easy, to also say that rocket science is very difficult, but it is not. The reality is that people are doing rocket science, right? You need to be a rocket scientist, but the reality is that anybody could do anything. If you have the ability to ask the right questions and think critically, you will be able to do anything. So my second lesson to you, the first lesson is try and create jobs. The second lesson to you is don't worry about domain expertise. You can do whatever you want as long as you're passionate about it. And my third and the last lesson before I complete this talk today is to say whatever you do in your career, please conduct yourself with the highest standards of integrity. When I was going through a very difficult period and we were facing financial difficulties at home, I met somebody who was a CEO of another e-commerce company. He came and said, give me your company's database and we'll give you money. I said, no problem, write a check in the company's name and take the database. He said, no, I want to give it to you because why? What is the point of helping the company? The company is not helping you. You're suffering. You're going to court. I'll give you money. I said, no, this is a company's asset. I can't sell it to you on my own and take the money. He was very insistent and he offered me 1 crore rupees in cash. It is an opportunity for me. It would have made a lot of financial sense for me going through severe pressure, difficulties. And all I had to do is copy the database and give it to me. It's not that I'm giving it to him permanently, nothing. I mean, the database would still remain. But I told him, no, I can't give it to you. It's the company's property. You write a check in the company's name, you give it. If you give it to me, I'm not interested because it doesn't appeal to my sense of integrity. The question he said is, who will know about it? My answer to him was, I will know about it. And that's my third and last point to you. Always conduct yourself with the highest standards of personal integrity, whatever you do. You may be an entrepreneur, you may be working somewhere, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that all of you will go become an entrepreneur. At least 99% of you will not become entrepreneurs. You'll work in companies, you'll build great careers, there's nothing wrong. But whatever you do, make sure you conduct yourself with great personal integrity. That is one thing in your control. Through your career, through your life, you will be faced with multiple situations where you come to a fork in the road. And that fork, there'll be a right. And the other one will not be left, it will be wrong. The one that is on the wrong side, not the left side, will take you to promised riches and money very quickly. The one on the right side, the right is not the direction, but the righteousness, will take you on a path which could be difficult. It may not end well, but you'll always sleep comfortably at night. That's the path you must follow. And if you do that, irrespective of what you do, you'll end up very well. I wish all of you incredible success in your careers. Good luck and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your words of inspiration. We owe you immense respect for your pursuance towards life and making us understand the blend of failure and success in our lives. And thank you again for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much.
We have a couple of questions for you, sir.
Sure.
First one goes like this. What do you think of the direct-to-consumer method of building food and beverage brands in India?
Well, my short answer to you is that's exactly what we are trying to do. Our business also, we're trying to do a D2C food and beverage. It's obviously got great potential in a country like India, where you're eliminating third parties, you're eliminating retailers in between. You're able to control the inventory, you're able to control the margin, and the only focus is to technically manage how to grow customers and business every day. So I certainly think it's got great potential. It's worth exploring. I'm doing it now. And if any of you are interested to do a D2C brand, you should go ahead and do it. In fact, if any of you are interested, when you're finishing, if you want to intern in a D2C business, feel free to write to me. We're constantly looking for people like you who finishing college and want to learn how to do D2C business. Be happy to have some of you to join and learn from us. And then you can also later do your own thing. But I think it's an exciting period and great opportunity.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, an interesting one. Why is money the most common way for judging the success? What is your comment about it?
Well, the reason money is the most common way, and I like the question because you use the word common instead of saying the correct way, is because it is easy to comprehend. The human mind is always able to comprehend stuff that is in boxes, and a number is a box, right? The number of students, the number of boys, the number of girls, the family income, the number of cars on the road, the number of citizens in India. I mean, anything which is number is an easy thing to comprehend. And money is a very common denominator. So it's an easy way to compare yourself. I have 20 lakh rupees. You have 2 crore rupees. You are 10 times more successful than me. Somebody else has 20 crores. That person has 10 times more happiness than the other person. So it's a very easy way to calculate. Now, the word that you use is common. And this is the reason it's common, because everybody is able to bring it down to a number, hence commonality. But the more important thing is, it is not necessarily the right thing. I think people have their own methods and ways of evaluating success. I have very different things of evaluating success, and I'm not going to give you a moral speech here saying money is not the most important thing in life, because that is not true. The reality is all of us need money, right? If you want to live and grow successfully and happily, live comfortably, you need money. So I'm not even going to stand, and certainly not to a group of business students saying money is not important. I think money is important. You must go and all of you must earn money. But all you remember is more money doesn't necessarily mean more happiness. And I think sooner in your life rather than later, remember what you have to earn in your life is happiness. And a lot of that happiness will come not by the amount of money that you have earned, but the amount of time you spend with your loved ones. Your loved one could be your parents, your brothers, sisters, wife, children. The amount of time you're able to spend with your loved ones is the way to evaluate success. I mean, when you're 60, 70 years old, you look back on your career and say, I earned 20 crore rupees, but I could never spend time with my spouse and my kids and my parents. I think it's a life wasted. Whereas somebody else has only 1 crore in the bank after he or she retires, but has spent most of their time spending time with their families and all. I would think that person has a more successful life. So I think we all make our own parameters, but you're right. Money is the most common way of judging success, but certainly not the correct way.
Thank you, sir, for your insights today.
Thank you so much.
We have yet another distinct personality among us.
our very own vibrant Dean, Dr. A.R. Rajagopalan. He has been a constant source of support and motivation to all the students at SJIM. Now, may I request the Dean, Dr. A.R. Rajagopalan, to propose the vote of thanks.
Shreya, thank you so much. That was an introduction for most of the people who are listening to us. Anyhow, thank you for having allowed me to do the vote of thanks. I have a written script today because I don't want to ignore anything or miss out on anything. And I just texted Dr. Thompson that I've been sitting here all day and listening to all the speakers for every single word of what they have communicated, which I will pass on to you in a very brief manner now, and maybe at some other time in a detailed manner. Right. Of all the obligations, the intellectual ones are the most difficult ones to discharge as we go towards the closure of this day's proceedings. Our sincere thanks to the SJIM management, the BJS, Bangalore Jesuit Education Society, and our director, Reverend Father Dr. Manoj D'Souza, for having graciously accepted to hosting of this conference by SJIM. Secondly, our grateful acknowledgement to all the speakers of the day, and this follows. Dr. Sanjay Singh, who spoke on the digital reach and trust, instinctive behavior, innovation models, and so on and so forth. Mr. Nitin Paranjpi, the man from Unilever, on the Darwinian theory, the Black Swan events, and the need for personal institutional reflection. Mr. Shom Shubropal Chaudhary, who spoke on the need to identify the right startups and having a consumer-centric venture capitalist preference. Again, black swans like the Hurricane Katrina. And he also introduced a new concept, the first movers versus fast followers. Very interesting. Then followed by Professor Justin Paul before the lunchtime. Vanished hospitality, tourism, labor-intensive industries in the onset of COVID-19, the 7P framework for business plan, the distribution categories. Again, he introduced first mover versus fast mover. Then post-lunch, we had Mr. Sanjay Mitra, who was representing the Indian Tobacco Company. He also touched upon the World Economic Forum report on the impact on people, the new normal to ensure business continuity, ILO's International Labour Organization's 4P model, union management worked as one team in ITC, and so on and so forth. Followed by Ms. Surekha Desai, who had an exquisite exposition of the Gartner report on consumer experience, classic exposition of the evolution of customer experience indicators, and lead versus lag indicators. The third new term that we are learning today. Followed by Mr. Ramananda SG from Pearson, who spoke on the factors driving change in the higher educational sector, stakeholder concerns, the Pearson Global Learning Survey, and the hybrid higher education landscape. Finally, the icing on the cake, Mr. Vaitheeswaran K. Sir, if you are listening, hats off to you. The personal story on failing to succeed, a mention of J.K. Rowling, which I have also mentioned in the class, all for their very insightful observations, viewpoints, and thought provokers. Despite their professional and personal schedules, they have given their unconditional time, which SJIM appreciates much. SJIM also recognizes the contribution of all the faculty members, full-time, adjunct, and visiting, our staff who have coordinated in the conduct of this day's events, our alumni who have been part of this day's proceedings, all of our students, including student volunteers and other support people who have been part of the success of this day's events. A special word of mention and appreciation to Dr. Thompson Rajan, faculty in the marketing area, who has spearheaded this conference relentlessly for the past 3 months and more, liaising with potential speakers, student volunteers, all despite a personal health setback. Finally, to the glory of the Lord, who has been a light unto our heads and a lamp unto our paths. Thank you, one and all, for all that you have been throughout this day. God bless. Thank you very much, Shreya.
Thank you, sir, for briefing out today's events. Thank you so much. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu commented, "The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and this is our first step on the long road." It is definitely hard to say that we have come to an end of today's program, and I'm extremely thankful to everyone for being part of this conference and for all the constant support. The conference will resume tomorrow at 10 a.m. Once again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Team SJIM, for your wonderful work.
Thank you, sir.